Hey you all, let's talk through the week of NYC. Since we're starting to get registrants, we should make sure we have some really good stuff planned.
Good idea. Let's start at the beginning.
Well, morning devotions start at 7 a.m.
Hashtag rise and shine.
Hashtag good morning, God.
Hashtag start your day off right.
Hashtag Jesus before breakfast.
Hashtag they're great. After morning worship, there are small groups, which are made of about 10 to 15 people from all across the country.
Hashtag new friends.
Hashtag group games. Hashtag human not. What if I put your head? Yeah, my head. Okay.
Hashtag reflective.
Hashtag what did we just talk about in worship? Hashtag anybody?
Hashtag Jesus.
And there's service projects that help us put our faith into action.
Hashtag serving our neighbor.
Hashtag be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Hashtag be the eyes and nose.
Hashtag really, Tim?
We are planning awesome workshops that cover a variety of topics and all strengthen our faith. There's something for everyone.
Hashtag what do you like?
Hashtag Jesus.
Hashtag perfect.
Hashtag get some knowledge.
Hashtag how to live your life.
Hashtag all of the interests.
Hashtag 30 workshops a day. Hashtag good luck picking one.
Hashtag tier.
Everyone has an option to go hiking in the Rocky Mountains.
Hashtag mountain views.
Hashtag Rocky Mountains for life.
Hashtag climb every mountain.
Hashtag 14,000 feet. Hashtag Chuck Norris hike. Hashtag is there even oxygen up there?
Hashtag a little bit, but not a lot. It's a little known fact that yaks can live up to 19,000 feet, but trees stop growing at 7 to 10,000 feet above sea level.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hashtag you're welcome.
But we're hoping to see a hashtag mountain sheep.
Hashtag Cam the Ram.
Hashtag bleed.
Don't forget about recreation. There's something for everyone, from ultimate frisbee to crafts.
Hashtag rockwall.
Hashtag b-ball. Hashtag nothing but net.
Hashtag boom.
And you can make crafts in the hashtag art room.
Some people need hashtag chill time.
Hashtag alone time.
Hashtag introverts can hide.
Hashtag but seriously. Hashtag where's Tim? For those who like to stay up late, there's a plethora of late night activities.
Hashtag night owls.
Hashtag Ren Collective. Hashtag build your kingdom here.
Or how about a little hashtag kumquat?
Hashtag I need a little lime juice in my life.
Or maybe you like to hashtag dance a lot. Hashtag swing. Hashtag your partner round and round.
But you got a hashtag big curfew, hashtag midnight.
I can't wait for 3,000 brother mutes to gather together for morning and evening worship.
Hashtag best part of NYC.
Can't wait for the hashtag dynamic speakers.
Like hashtag the most Reverend Mr. Dr. President Jeffrey Carter.
And hashtag Jared McKenna.
Hashtag hey mate.
Hashtag youth speech contest winners. Hashtag the cool kids.
Hashtag for real.
Hashtag and we get to praise Jesus.
Hashtag old
And those hashtag brethren harmonies. Hashtag the meadows are awesome.
Hashtag hallelujah, 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 amen.
I think we have a lot of amazing things happening. You can stay up to date on our social media pages and find the links at brethren.org/NYC.
Hashtag Facebook.
Hashtag Twitter.
Hashtag YouTube.
Hashtag Pinterest.
Hashtag Instagram.
Hashtag what is the NYC hashtag?
Hashtag COB NYC.